was 16, I carried a candelabra. And then I stage managed the Sadler's Wells. I danced in it on the tour, John Cranko's choreography. And then I went to Covent Garden where I directed it in the old production. I had to sort of do something with the old production. And I worked with extraordinary people like Gobby and Sturdeström, Bette Jansen, Margaret Price debut, Franey, Geraint Evans, of course. And I have a very nice remembrance of Gobby and Sturdeström in the scene that we've just seen. They were so accomplished and they rehearsed so marvellously together. They admired each other. We allowed them to do that recitative differently every night. They would never actually, they would just do it. Neither would tell each other what they were going to do.
Would they do something different?
Every night. And every night they made each other do something quite daring and extraordinary. And that's the only time this ever happened in my career. But they were so special. She also did Susanna, curiously, during that time, because she stood in a very short notice one night for Susanna and sang some of it in Swedish. Yes. She was so marvelous.
Now, in the number of times that you've been involved in it or seen it, were there any near disasters that you suffered through and haunt you at this time?
We did have one marvelous story at Covent Garden. Before I did my production in '71, I think it was in 1968, and we didn't have a countess. And they found that Joan Ingpen, who was at the Met for many years, discovered that an Irish singer had done it. She'd done it in Italian, and we knew it. We couldn't find, it was snow on the ground, we couldn't find anybody else. And she agreed to do it, and she came on the boat train. She arrived at lunchtime, and we fitted her the costume, did the wig, and then we started a little rehearsal. Because Act 2 has to be rehearsed. You can't do Act 2 cold. You have to know where the doors are, you have to know where everybody's hiding. So she started singing. I'd never heard her sing in Italian. She had been at Covent Garden much earlier with Kathleen Ferrier. She'd sung Mimi with Bobby Rowley, but always in English. I'd never heard her sing in Italian. She sang Porgiamo very charmingly. It was a bit leprechaunish, but it was very charming. And we got to the end of the aria, and the pianist played the chord for the recitative, and nothing happened. She didn't sing anything. So I said to the pianist, and she still didn't say anything. So I said, it's Vieni cara Susanna, finisci la storia. And she said, oh, I don't do the recitatives, dear. I only do the numbers. And I said, come on. No, dear, I only do the numbers. I don't do the recitatives. So I went to Sir David's office, which was along the corridor, and he had a wonderful giant, sort of monstrous and big lady who was very scary as his assistant. And she said, what do you want? You can't see him now, you have no appointment. And I said, well, the Countess only does the numbers. She doesn't do the recitatives. She said, I think we'd better go in. So I went in, and Sir David was sitting at his desk. He always received you writing, he was always silent. He said, what is it, lad? What is it? I said, the Countess for tonight's performance only does the numbers. She doesn't do the recitatives, Sir David. He said, well, teach them to her. Teach them to her, dear boy. What do I pay you for? I said, well, I don't think that I can teach her the recitatives by 7 o'clock tonight. And he looked up, he said, well, what do you suggest we do? And I said, Swan Lake. And we did Swan Lake, actually, but we couldn't do an opera.
You couldn't have done that?
No. That was kind of scary.
How do you, when you're on top of what you want to do in a new production of this, how do you handle the fact that it is both it's very funny and at the same time it's very profound? Does that pose a special challenge that you've got to operate on more than one level?
I think that's the marvellous thing about it. As Christopher was saying earlier, the magic of this piece is that it transcends one, it's like the cherry orchard. You can have moments of the deepest grief and go straight into comedy. I think that's what is so marvellous about it. One of the things that you do have to be very careful about planning this show is the arrangement of where people are. In that scene we've just seen, for instance, the trio, Susanna has to be in a very good, audible place for the Count and the Countess. It's no good having her like 50 feet upstage so that she can hide but she can't be heard. Things like that. And the last act is very, very complicated to actually get right. I mean, that you really have to work out, and it took me like 2 productions before I really solved that.
Really?
Absolutely. And I think it's okay.
I heard that compared to Shakespeare's Twelfth Night in complication, last act complication.
Yes, but you see, in Twelfth Night you can always stop the text. The whole thing about opera is the music is relentless, so everybody's got to go boom, 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 and be at the right place at the right time.
Now,
That's hard.
it is said of you that you operate from the music outward. What does that mean?
Well, I think that I'm more a musician than anything. I was always brought up to be a musician. The music actually tells me what to do. You know, I never had any problem. People say, oh, isn't Handel difficult? Or isn't this difficult? The music is there it tells you what to do.
Now, is it through the music, not that Mozart wrote in the margins any stage directions necessarily?
If you listen to what he's written, it's very, very clear.
You can tell what he did.
And you can tell that if you really analyse where people should be. For instance, in that very last finale, you know that the Countess and Susanna, because they're actually singing in thirds, you know that physically they need to be somewhere where they can actually hear each other, tune to each other, and that actually sets your drama right anyway, because they are together at that moment.
Now, the music being set, does that restrict staging in any way, or can you still be versatile?
Oh no, I think it helps. I mean, it tells you what to do. I mean, I always thought what was much easier than theatre, because the music's there, it just relentlessly hurls you along.
I've got it, the last few moments we have. This opera seems to be filled with sexual tension.
Oh, yeah.
And lined across and recross with the whole group all the time. Is that something we might, in this era, imagine, or was it there from the beginning?
I think sex has always been there. Let's hope it always will.
But the way we interpret the opera, is that
I think we may be freer with it now. I mean, I think we are much more sexually aware of the predicaments of the people. I mean, there's every kind of sexuality in this. It's one of the reasons why I like it so much. And I love working with actors and singers who will show their sexuality, who are not afraid to. And I think that is one of my little gifts. I do make people less timid and less shy about it. I do know that. After they've been with me for 3 or 4 days, they're a little bit easier, they're a little bit more comfortable being sexy, if you like. I mean, these 2 kids, I mean, I think they're absolutely marvellous. They're so natural, and I believe that they're in love, and I believe they really want to go to bed at the end of this opera, and they will.
maybe that your input is partly at least responsible for the fact that this group gets along so well.
Well, Figaro is always a happy opera, I have to say. Very few times I've had an unhappy experience. Once or twice, a few megalomaniacs, but generally it's an ensemble piece. And we do all get on very well, I have to say that.
Yes, it seems to be the case. Well, it's a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to the second half of the opera, the next 2 acts.
Great, thank you very much.
John. Good talking with you. Rosenkavalier, I guess, were you a woman playing the part of a man who then plays the part of a woman. Do you ever get wires crossed about which you're supposed to be?
Well, you know, it's really funny. We've been working with John Copley all along, and we just changed something a few performances ago, where instead of me wearing my boots under the dress, and the next act when he dressed me up, he had me put stockings and shoes on. And when I walked out on stage that night with stockings and shoes on, I felt really humiliated. I felt really
You felt like a man wearing...
I really did, and I thought, this is really strange.
That is strange. That's what I understand that Dean Peterson sometimes has helped you backstage to get into your macho
Yes, he
movement.
comes back to my dressing room before every performance for male bonding.
Yeah.
He slugs me a few times, hits me on the back, and we talk low.
And that helps.
I guess so.
You mentioned John Copley. He's said to be a singer's director. Does that strike you as the case?
Oh, unquestioned. I mean, he understands. I mean, you should be in rehearsals with him. He can sing all of the roles, and
He's a wonderful countess.
Yeah, he's fabulous, and he really understands the necessities of what it takes to make them look
It'd be appropriate to think